going kite fishing tomorrow. You know, the way that I kite fish down here, it's a little bit different than most guys. You know, a lot of guys I found here in the Keys, or a lot of kite fishermen in general, certainly this time of the year, are really focused on sailfish, right? Because of course it's peak sailfish season. So of course, if I'm gonna fish for sailfish, now would be, you know, when to do it. But there's so much else to catch as well. You know, king mackerel, blackfin tunas, cobias, wahoo, the list goes on. And especially here in the Keys, we could fish top to bottom, you know? So when I'm kite fishing, I really like to cover the water column. And I just wanted to share with you the tackle that I choose to do that with and how I do it. And again, there's so many different ways to kite fish. Guys are doing it, you know, like I said, the tournament fishermen, out of their outriggers, they've got a huge spread, incredibly effective. When, you know, meat fishing in the spring and summer, it's not uncommon to see these big center consoles flying, you know, we used to fly 2 kites, 3 baits off each, and then a 3rd kite right down the middle with 2 additional baits. So we'd have 8 baits off of 3 kites. And that's, you know, that's taking it way up there. Of course, with all of the flat lines on the opposite side of the boat. If you're looking for king mackerel and blackfin tuna to put some, you know, points on the board, there's no better way. But you need the right team, the right people, the right group, right? The right experience to take it to that level. And certainly you can get there, but it has to start somewhere. So I want you to kind of just consider this overall spread, how I'm fishing, why I'm doing it this way. Wanted to share it all with you. And here it is, mid-February. We're just getting ready for the Miami International Boat Show this upcoming weekend. So I just want to point out, look, if you're coming to the boat show, make sure you know that you swing by the Sea Hunter Boats display. There's some new models that they're introducing that I'd love to show you. I'll be there on Sunday over at the Miami Beach Convention Center. So I look forward to seeing you there, but let's get right to it. So look, we're fishing aboard our Mercury-powered Sea Hunter 41, right? Big cat. And that means I've got a lot of room. I want to fish all around the boat, but more importantly, this time of the year, I like to cover ground. I want to fish different depths. I don't want to stay in one spot. All right, a lot of these guys will either power drift right into the current in a certain depth, or they'll anchor and fish in a certain depth. That could really be effective if the fish are piled up on an edge. There might be bait or color change, a lot of different factors as to why you may want to stay right in that little window. But there's also fish in other depths, right? So I like to drift, you know, and I think that that's a great method of kite fishing during this time of the year. But at the same time, I want to fish baits all around the boat, and I want to fish baits at different levels in the water column. So it's not only about, you know, the kite, but it's also about the flat lines and the deep baits as well. Let me show you how I do that. So look, I might get a little carried away, but I don't know what I'm gonna find out there. So I really am very strategic about the tackle that I bring and why I bring it. For starters, of course, for every kite, and when I say for every kite, because we're just fishing 1 kite tomorrow. We're just gonna fly 1 kite. So I know, you know, that I need my 3 lines, my 3 outfits for that 1 kite, and then I bring a spare because you just never know what could happen. Plus, if whatever, a million different scenarios where sometimes it's easier to just grab another rod that's rigged and capitalize on what could be a hot bite during a small period of time, right? So, you know, you've got to be ready. So I bring 3 outfits rigged and ready for kite fishing, and then a 4th also rigged and ready as a spare. These are our Chaos Gold KC 15 to 30 pound class 7-foot live bait rods. It's a staple. I'm certain it is Chaos's most popular rod, and for good reason. And it's an absolutely ideal kite fishing rod. It's matched to your reel of choice, something that holds a lot of line, because remember, this line is going, and if it's your far bait, it's going way up there to that release clip, which is way up there, and then way back down into the water. So you've got a lot of line out before you even get a bite, okay? So that's a lot of line. So you need a lot of line capacity. That's really important. A fast reel, because when you get a bite, you got to catch up on all of that slack too. So you certainly need a fast reel with a lot of line capacity. That's the key. I don't care what brand you choose. This is a Shimano Talica, but makes no difference. Daiwa, Avets, there's a lot of great kite fishing reels out there. Line, super important, 20-pound diamond line, high vis. This is the Orange Crush. You could fish 30-pound, that's cool. 20-pound I found to be really sporty. It's also a little thinner, so it catches less wind. These are small details that are gonna make a huge difference in my kite fishing outfits, okay? You may not think it will, but it will. When there's a breeze, the thinner that line is, the easier it is for me to achieve the perfect presentation with that live bait. The high vis line, vital. Come on guys, look. On a clear day with the sun blaring in your eyes, you think you're gonna see these clear lines, you need something that really has a lot of visibility. So that's very, very important. I rig my outfits, you know, there's no weight on here, but of course we'll talk about all the terminal gear in a couple seconds. But the leader itself is in fact clear 40-pound fluorocarbon, right? The diamond presentation. And I include about a 12-inch trace of wire, all right? Why? Because I know that at any moment there's wahoo around and a wahoo could crush one of my baits, one of my gogs. And I at least want to have a chance with that fish, or a big king. Okay, I want to have a chance with a big smoker as well. So not a lot of hardware, but a short trace, 12 inches of wire right to a live bait hook, bridle to a goggle eye, boom, I'm kite fishing. So certainly 4 outfits there, along with a couple of kite rods. And look, and when I say kite rods, these are the rods that we're using to fly the kite. Okay, obviously you'll need some power assist reels. This is a Shimano Beastmaster. Once again, there's other options. Here's a Daiwa Mega Twin, okay, right here. And that's a great option. And you can see I bring 2 different outfits, 50-pound, 30-pound. Once again, that small little difference in the diameter of the line on a day when there's very, very little wind, that could make a big difference in getting that kite up. On the other hand, if it's a steady breeze and gusty, you're certainly gonna want the slightly heavier braid for a little bit more security from the rod tip to the kite itself in those adverse conditions. So it's always a good idea to have a couple of different classes, and always a good idea to have a backup. And that's the same with the kites. Look, don't go out there with one kite. Okay, we carry an entire bag of kites. They get wet, they don't fly. And trust me, if you kite fish enough, it's gonna friggin' fall in the water. It's gonna happen. Anybody who's ever kite fished knows they get wet, all right? And when they get wet, they don't fly. So make sure that you bring some spare kites. We're not gonna get into the nuances of all the little details. I'd be here forever. What I really wanna do is just talk to you about the tackle. So again, those are my kite rods. That's what I'm flying my kite. I've got my kite outfits right there, rigged and ready. Okay, that's step 1. Okay, but that's just part of the plan. Now, of course, once the kite baits are up, you know, I also consider the flatline side, the other side of the boat. I want to maximize on every bite, because you just never know what bait's going to get crushed, what you're going to catch. And you know, I say this all the time to people. One fish could make such a big difference in the outcome of the entire trip. One fish. And that fish could be, you know, one of so many different species. How about a big African pompano? How about a big 32-inch mutton snapper, or whatever, you know, the list goes on and on. So I really like to capitalize on all of those opportunities, you know, when I'm kite fishing. So once I have my kite up, and either I'm working the kite, somebody else is working the kite, then what we do is we deploy some flat lines on the other side of the boat, and usually that's just a spinner. Okay, same thing, Chaos Gold 15 to 30-pound class, 7-foot live bait spinning rod. It's essentially the exact same blank as the conventional rod. So I'm very familiar with the action of the rod, the power of the rod, the capabilities of the rod, matched to whatever. Again, a lot of options and quality spinners. This is a Shimano Twin Power, okay, size 8,000. Just a perfect light combo, very powerful, you know, but very sensitive and just a lot of fun to fish, you know, all around, and so versatile. Braid, a lot of braid. I've got 30-pound braid, about, you know, maybe almost to the top of the spool, but I've got a 100-foot top shot of 30-pound mono. So it's a 30-pound spinning outfit with 30-pound braid, 30-pound mono. And then my leader will vary. I don't fish any wire. My hook size will vary. If I've got a pilchard, thread fin, cigar minnow, I'll fish a 5/0 hook. If I'm fishing a goggle eye or a blue runner, I'll fish a 7/0 live bait hook. We'll throw one off the bow. We'll throw one off the stern. We try and separate them not only in distance on the boat, but also in distance away from the boat, because goggle eyes and all bait fish are schooling fish. And if they see each other, they'll often swim together and potentially tangle. Plus, we want to cover more of the water column. So this bait may be out a couple of 100 feet, and this bait may be out 100 feet. Lock it up, put the rod in the rod holder. You're done, okay? But now, you already have this presentation of having live baits all around the boat as you're drifting across a productive depth of water, okay? It's a no-brainer, but it doesn't end there. For me, it's about really covering the bases across the board. It's not about specifically targeting one particular fish. So I also bring a set of 8-foot rods. They're a little bit longer. These are my mutton rods that I fish, or wreck fishing rods in general. Okay, it's a KC 30 to 80. It's a very thin blank, but it's incredibly sensitive, incredibly light, incredibly strong. And I really, really like this rod. I've spent so much time with this rod in my hand. It's matched to an Oshia jigger. I know that's a jigging reel, and you're like, why do you have a jigging reel on a conventional rod? Because it has so much torque, and it really makes it easy to put the heat on a big mutton. We have a shark problem down here in the Keys. So, that extra torque makes a big difference to get a quality fish away from a shark. And depending on current, depending on conditions, depending on who's on the boat, this could be a fish finder type rig with an 8-ounce egg sinker and just kind of feed it out away from the boat as the boat is drifting. You could have a long 40 or 50 foot diamond presentation, 40-pound fluorocarbon leader with like a 16-ounce bank sinker hanging off of a loop, and just hit the bottom with that, crank it up 3 or 4 times so it's not bouncing on the bottom, and just drift that across the bottom. And we like to put out at least 2 of these. I don't want to say at least 2. 2. One up in the bow and one in the stern, right? So up in the bow, we've got a flat line up on top on the spinner that we just talked about. And then we've got a deep bait right on the bottom. One guy can work both those rods. Okay, that's a station. That's what we'll call it. Bait up on top, bait on the bottom. It's his responsibility. Do the same in the stern. You've got a guy fishing a rod up on, as a flat line and another deep bait. I'm really feeling good about this at this point. I've got my 3 kite baits up. They're right up on the surface as we're drifting along. And I've got 2 flat lines and 2 deep baits. 7 baits in the water, covering a lot of the water around the boat. Man, you never know what could happen with that, And then, like I said, I like to drift from, I like to cover the 120, I'll even say, I don't like to go much shallower than 120 because a lot of small kings, barracudas. So 120 to 220, right? Somewhere in that range, that's really ideal. And man, if that breeze and those conditions can have you just drifting across that whole area slowly, and if you can properly present all of those baits the way that we just discussed effectively and do it the right way, everything rigged right, all of the details, you really pay attention to those details, be ready to make those modifications along the way, but have that plan in place. This is the spread, this is what I'm shooting for. You may need a sea anchor. You may need to turn the wheel to kind of position the boat to ride, to drift at the correct orientation with the prevailing sea conditions, because it changes, currents, winds, waves. It all affects how you're going to drift. Every boat's a little bit different. So there may be times where just a small adjustment on the wheel, because remember, your outboard or outboards also act as rudders. So by just turning that wheel a little bit, it could shift the way that boat lays in the current. And that helps with achieving a nice, clean presentation. Or like I said, a sea anchor, a parachute is another way of adjusting your speed and your position on the drift. So be ready with all of these things, be ready to adjust. Multiple baits, if you can be out there and have pilchards and gogs or two different kind of baits, great. If I had to only pick one, come on, it's a goggle-eye. It's a goggle-eye, okay? I don't care, you could tell me a threadfin herring is the best bait for a sailfish. You can tell me a bullet bonita is the best bait for a wahoo. But if I had to pick one bait across the board, it would be a live gog. Everything loves gogs, okay? So if I could fish gogs across the board, I'd be happy to do so, okay? And really gonna put you in a great position. There it is, okay? There it is. But there's one more step to the equation, one more piece of, really essential tackle that'll really help you seal the deal.